New Zealand. Land of pristine bays. Land of lush valleys. Land of wool and Maori culture. The world's first dawn rises over a remote land. Ancient forests embrace hidden valleys. Dormant volcanoes watch over turquoise lakes. Welcome to New Zealand. Welcome to the last great habitable land discovered by humankind. Breaking away from the supercontinent Gondwana about 85 million years ago and drifting into the ocean, it is a place where nature has followed its own evolutionary path, undisturbed for millennia. But let's explore this enchanted land together. New Zealand stands in the vastness of the Pacific in splendid isolation. Australia, its closest neighbor, is over 1,200 miles away, making this nation one of the most remote territories on the planet. An island, actually two, which are the North Island and South Island, each containing a world of its own. This earthly paradise is crossed by the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is a zone of intense seismic and volcanic activity and which has shaped its landscapes. Wellington, the windy capital perched among the hills, is one of the most earthquake-prone cities in the world, living in a precarious balance with the forces of the earth. The natural diversity, on the other hand, is simply extraordinary here, and without comparison. In just a few hours of travel, you can go from tropical beaches with turquoise waters to majestic glaciers that slide between mountains, almost touching the rainforest. A breathtaking contrast, as if multiple worlds were compressed into a single territory, creating a mix of landscapes that challenges the imagination of anyone who ventures into these lands. Then there are Gisborne or East Cape on the North Island, which are the first places in the world to see the dawn every day. A magical moment in which the sun's rays caress the land for the first time after crossing the vastness of the ocean. But New Zealand is also a sanctuary of unparalleled biodiversity, with 30% of its territory protected as national park or nature reserve. An extraordinary commitment to preserve unique ecosystems that have evolved in perfect isolation for millions of years. Here, curiously, there are no land snakes, and it is one of the few places in the world completely devoid of these reptiles. This absence is a testament to the evolutionary isolation of the archipelago, where nature has followed unexpected and surprising paths, creating a biological oasis that continues to amaze scientists and visitors. Unlike neighboring Australia, there are no venomous or deadly animals. The only noteworthy predator is the tuatara, a prehistoric reptile that has traversed the ages, surviving even the dinosaurs. Additionally, this is a land where it's possible to witness a unique spectacle. Dolphins, penguins, seals, and albatrosses sharing the same natural habitat. Right on the Otago Peninsula, in an explosion of biodiversity that almost seems deliberately arranged. In this natural setting, however, live just 5 million inhabitants, but over 25 million sheep. A ratio of 5 ovines for every human, which makes the landscape unmistakable. The wool and sheep meat industry, in fact, still represents a pillar of the local economy today, painting the green hills of this archipelago with many small white dots, while farms extend to the horizon. Continuing, New Zealanders have forged a progressive and cutting-edge society and are affectionately called Kiwis, like the country's symbolic bird, which is nocturnal, flightless, and has hair like feathers. It's no coincidence that in 1893, New Zealand was the first nation in the world to grant women the right to vote, ahead of its time and customs. Even today, it's considered one of the most progressive and livable countries, where 3 languages have coexisted officially since 1987. English, Maori, and New Zealand's Sign Language, in total respect for cultural diversity. Another important aspect of the nation is rugby, which here is not just a sport, but a true religion. The All Blacks, in fact, have become one of the most feared and respected teams in world sports history, embodying the indomitable spirit of this nation. And one cannot talk about this country without mentioning its connection to Middle-earth and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, thanks to which the nation experienced an unprecedented tourism boom. New Zealand, therefore, reveals itself as a treasure of extraordinary beauty in the Pacific Ocean, a microcosm of natural wonders. And it's precisely from these wonders that our journey begins to discover the most incredible places in this nation. Fiordland National Park and Milford Sound. The black waters ripple as boats advance between rock walls that rise hundreds of meters from the sea. This is the place where mountains meet the ocean and where rainwater descends in waterfalls that seem to be born from the clouds themselves. Milford Sound, New Zealand's most famous fjord, represents just one of the many hidden wonders in this vast national park. This fjord, 10 miles long and up to 1,300 feet deep, is the most accessible and visited gem in this park, which includes 13 other fjords and covers over a tenth of the South Island. Here we find vast types of landscapes from glacial valleys to alpine lakes, from steep mountains to temperate rainforests, where unique animal species thrive. Seals, for example, relax on the rocks, while dolphins play in the wake left by boats. And then there are penguins nesting in protected inlets, the majestic Kaikoura flying among trees with their noisy wings, and the beeches, which are majestic and characteristic trees dominating these ancient forests. Rain falls here for over 200 days a year, transforming every corner into a temporary mix of waterfalls, while nature continues its eternal cycle in one of the last wild paradises left on Earth. Rotorua. Steam rises from the ground, as if the soil were breathing. Then comes the smell, sulfur, unmistakable, persistent. Rotorua lives on the border between the underground world and the surface. Here, water boils in lakes and mud pools and explodes in geysers that shoot columns of water toward the sky. This is a place where the power of the earth manifests without filters. But Rotorua is not just geology in action. In fact, it's also the beating heart of Maori culture, which has found a home in this volcanic landscape for centuries. The city of Rotorua, moreover, offers geothermal parks surrounding the urban center and steam that escapes even from the manholes in the streets. Residents have learned to coexist with volcanic activity, building houses on warm land and creating tourist attractions that showcase the hidden power beneath their feet. Every corner of this land tells stories of fire, of traditions that resist time, and of a precarious balance between forces that could awaken at any moment. Queenstown. Mountains surround this urban center on the shores of Lake Waiheke, creating a setting that attracts visitors from around the world. Queenstown has lived on adrenaline since 1988, when the first commercial bungee jumping was launched from the Kaikoura Bridge. Since then, the city has transformed into the world capital of extreme sports, where jet boats streak through the shot-over river canyons and zip lines allow flying above the forest. Winter covers the mountains with snow, bringing skiers and snowboarders to the slopes, while when the sun sets, bars and restaurants along the small streets of the center fill up with tired but satisfied adventurers. Additionally, just minutes from the urban bustle, quiet trails lead into the silence of nature. Queenstown represents the true contrast of New Zealand. A place to seek the extreme or peace, where wild nature meets modern comfort, where each season brings a new version of the same beauty. Bay of Islands. Turquoise waters divide around 144 islands in this bay in northern New Zealand. Here, the country's history took shape in 1840 when Maori and British signed the Treaty of Waitangi, a document that still defines the nation today. Dolphins swim alongside boats as tourists move between islands, some inhabited, others remaining wild. Furthermore, the ocean has carved openings in the rock, like the famous Hole in the Rock, where boats pass through when the tide permits. In the small inhabited centers of Paihia and Russell, on the other hand, there are cafes and venues where life flows peacefully. The islands also preserve sacred Maori sites and ancient fortifications, which tell of wars and alliances. This archipelago represents the meeting of two cultures and the genesis of a nation, all surrounded by a sea that changes color with the hours of the day. Tongariro National Park. Three volcanoes rise from the center of the North Island, forming a landscape that almost seems to belong to another planet. Tongariro National Park encloses Mount Ruapihu, Ngauruhoe, and Tongariro, still active and revered as ancestral by the Maori people. Mount Ngauruhoe, with its perfect conical shape, became famous as Mount Doom in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Emerald-colored lakes, on the other hand, dot the Tongariro Alpine Crossing, one of the most celebrated hiking routes in the world, where the terrain changes from forests to volcanic deserts in a few hours of walking. In winter, moreover, snow covers the slopes of Ruapihu, transforming it into a ski resort. This national park, which was New Zealand's first and is a UNESCO heritage site, represents nature in its most primordial form, a place where the land continues to create and destroy itself in an endless cycle. Wanaka and its lake. The water of the lake reflects the mountains like a mirror, creating an image that has become a symbol on social media. The solitary willow growing from the waters of Wanaka has attracted photographers from every corner of the planet, but represents just the beginning of what this place offers. The lake, formed by ancient glaciers, extends for 28 miles, surrounded by peaks exceeding 6,500 feet. The town of Wanaka, on the other hand, maintains a more relaxed atmosphere than nearby Queenstown, with cafes overlooking the water and open-air cinemas where the audience sits on vintage sofas. In autumn, colors explode on the shores, while in winter, snow descends almost to touch the water. Then there are the mountain trails that lead to Roy's Peak, but we'll talk about that later. Wanaka lives in the rhythm of the seasons, continually transforming while remaining a refuge of tranquility in an increasingly frantic world. Hobbiton. The green hills of the Alexander Farm were transformed forever when Peter Jackson chose this place to create the Hobbit Village. Today, tourists walk among the 44 Hobbit houses with round doors and blooming gardens. No one lives here, yet the village seems inhabited, with laundry hung out to dry and garden tools left, as if the hobbits had stepped out just moments before. The details tell different stories, like the fisherman who has fish in front of his house, or the baker who displays freshly baked loaves. At the end of the tour, there is the Green Dragon Inn, which serves beer produced specifically for Hobbiton. This permanent film set represents the meeting between fiction and reality, where the boundaries between the world imagined for a film and the New Zealand countryside vanish with each step. Kaikoura. Whales dive just a few kilometers from the coast, while mountains dominate the horizon. Kaikoura is a peninsula and exists thanks to a unique geological phenomenon, a marine trench 2 kilometers deep that approaches the coast, creating the perfect habitat for sperm whales and dolphins. This peninsula has a history tied to the sea since the 1800s, when European whale hunters settled here, but today the animals are observed rather than hunted. Fur seals, moreover, populate the peninsula's rocks, indifferent to tourists passing on coastal paths, while the town's main street fills with the aroma of fresh lobsters, the local specialty served in restaurants overlooking the ocean. It should be noted, however, that the 2016 earthquake raised the seabed by several meters, slightly but forever changing the geography of this place. Franz Josef and Fox glaciers. Ice descends from the mountains almost to sea level, a phenomenon that exists in few places around the world. The Franz Josef and Fox glaciers flow from high to low at a speed of about 13 feet per day, creating a landscape in constant transformation. Guides, in fact, accompany visitors through ice tunnels and formations that change every week. These gigantic rivers of ice form thanks to the abundant precipitation that falls on the southern Alps, where snow accumulates at high altitude, compacts under its own weight, and then slowly descends into the valley, creating these immense icy tongues that wind between the mountains. In the last century, both glaciers have retreated by over a kilometer, silent witnesses to profound climate change. Coromandel Peninsula. A strip of land that insinuates itself into the ocean, where lush forests meet golden beaches and crystal clear waters. The Coromandel Peninsula represents one of New Zealand's last refuges, where nature and simplicity coexist in perfect balance. At Mercury Bay, waves have sculpted a magnificent natural arch in the limestone rock, which stands on the white sand. It's called Cathedral Cove, accessible only on foot or by sea, and reveals its spectacle after a 45-minute path through coastal vegetation. Additionally, a few kilometers away is Hot Water Beach, a place where hot geothermal water filters through the sand during low tide, creating natural heated pools just steps from the ocean. And then there are the interior mountains which protect ancient forests of millennial kauri, while in villages like Whitianga and Hahei, the frantic rhythm of modern life seems to have never arrived. This peninsula has remained true to its bohemian spirit of the 1970s, when artists sought inspiration here, far from civilization, and still today offers a refuge to those who wish to find an authentic connection with nature. Dunedin. A city that seems transported directly from Scotland. Founded by Scottish settlers in 1848, Dunedin preserves the imprint of its ancestors in the neoclassical cathedral, Larnach Castle, and street names. The University of Otago, on the other hand, is the oldest in New Zealand and fills the center with students who animate historic cafes and pubs. Then there is the Otago Peninsula, extending east of the city, which is habitat to yellow-eyed penguins, seals, and royal albatrosses nesting on the cliffs. Special mention goes to Huriawa, which is located north of Dunedin and is a promontory sacred to the Maori, as it was an ancient fortress of one of their chiefs. This promontory is surrounded on three sides by the ocean and still preserves traces of defensive ditches and ceremonial areas. Dunedin, therefore, certainly preserves a European soul, but lives surrounded by New Zealand's wild nature, a contrast that defines the character of this city at the edge of the world. Lake Tekapo. Turquoise water fills this basin carved by glaciers, creating a mirror that reflects the sky and surrounding mountains. The lake's unique color derives from rock flour, the fine particles produced by glacial erosion that remain suspended in the water. On the shore stands the Church of the Good Shepherd, built in 1935, with a window that frames the lake like a moving painting. At night, the lake transforms into one of the best places in the world to observe stars, and indeed, the observatory on Mount John allows gazing at distant galaxies. In spring, wild lupines transform the shores into a kaleidoscope of purple, pink, and blue colors, creating a spectacular contrast with the turquoise water and mountains in the background. These plants, introduced in the 1950s, have become an icon of the landscape, despite actually being an invasive species that botanists and environmentalists try to control. Abel Tasman National Park. Golden beaches alternate with fern forests in this national park, accessible only on foot or by boat. Abel Tasman, the first European to touch New Zealand in 1642, gave his name to this coast without ever setting foot on land, Stopped by a hostile encounter with local Maori. Today, the coastal trail winds for 37 miles through isolated bays and rocky promontories, allowing walking from one beach to another. The park's coastal forest hosts extraordinary biodiversity, with rata trees with red flowers, enormous tree ferns, and the song of native birds accompanying visitors in every season. The tides, moreover, drastically change the landscape. During low tide, passages between islands emerge, while high tide creates hidden lagoons. Water taxis allow starting or ending excursions at any point in the park, while kayaks offer a perspective of the landscape from the sea. Mount Cook. New Zealand's highest mountain rises to 12,218 feet, dominating the surrounding landscape with its presence. The Maori call it Aoraki, meaning cloud piercer, a name that reveals the respect for this giant of rock and ice. Climbers from around the world come here to challenge the walls and glaciers, following in the footsteps of Edmund Hillary, who trained on these slopes before conquering Everest. Trails lead to glacial lakes, where ice blocks float on the water after breaking off from the glacier front. The Hooker Valley finally offers one of the most accessible views of the mountain, reachable with a 3-hour walk on relatively flat terrain. Waitomo Caves. Darkness envelops visitors as boats silently glide on the water in these caves. Then, looking up, the ceiling illuminates like a starry sky, thanks to thousands of luminous larvae. These limestone caves, carved over 30 million years by water filtering through rock, host a unique phenomenon. They're called the Waitomo glowworms, but are actually gnat larvae that produce light to attract prey into their sticky traps. The Maori knew these caves for centuries before they were discovered by a European explorer in 1887. Guided by a local chief. Today, beyond traditional boat excursions, adventurers can explore more remote caverns with spelunking techniques, while limestone formations continue to grow slowly, drop by drop. Auckland. A city extends between two harbors, with skyscrapers rising where active volcanoes once stood. Auckland hosts a third of New Zealand's population and is a metropolis built on a volcanic field, with 53 cones still visible in the urban landscape. The Sky Tower dominates the skyline at 1,076 feet, offering a 360-degree view of the city and the islands of the Hauraki Gulf. Boats, on the other hand, fill the marinas, giving Auckland the nickname City of Sails, while neighborhoods change character in just a few blocks. The Rangitoto volcano, finally formed just 600 years ago, stands on the horizon, reachable with a 25-minute ferry from the center. Auckland serves as the gateway to New Zealand, a place where the volcanic past and cosmopolitan present coexist between two oceans. Roy's Peak. A trail that rises through open pastures, developing on the mountain for 5 miles. Each step reveals a wider view of Lake Wanaka and surrounding mountains, until reaching the summit at 5,177 feet. This route has become one of the most photographed in New Zealand, thanks to a panoramic point about 3/4 of the way up, where a narrow ridge overlooks the void, with the lake and mountains in the background. Queues of hikers form from dawn, all waiting for their turn to take the iconic photo. And the trail, meanwhile, crosses private land where sheep graze undisturbed while humans pant on the ascent. From the top, on clear days, the gaze embraces Mount Aspiring and distant glaciers. Marlborough Sounds. Water insinuates itself between submerged mountains, creating a labyrinth of inlets and peninsulas. The Marlborough Sounds were born when the sea invaded ancient river valleys, forming a fragmented landscape where land and water intertwined for over 930 miles of coastline. Native forests descend to the sea, interrupted only by occasional bays, where small settlements arise, accessible only by water. The Queen Charlotte Track runs for 44 miles through this territory, allowing walking from one bay to another, while in the protected waters, mussel and salmon farms thrive, part of the industry that has made the Marlborough region famous. Furthermore, the ferries connecting the North Island with the South Island cross these landscapes, offering one of the most spectacular entrances in the world to the South Island. Stewart Island. The sea separates this island from mainland New Zealand, creating a refuge where time seems not to flow. Stewart Island, or Raikura in Maori language, meaning land of glowing skies, hosts only 400 permanent residents, but welcomes thousands of visitors seeking the authentic wild New Zealand spirit. "85% of the island is part of Rotorua National Park, where the kiwi, symbolic bird of the nation, still lives in the wild and can be spotted even during the day, contrary to its nocturnal habits. Trails cross primeval forests where trees have grown for centuries, while beaches remain deserted for miles. The island represents a last outpost of unspoiled nature, a place where native fauna thrives far from predators and humans. Napier. A city reborn from the ashes after the 1931 earthquake, which almost completely destroyed it. In just 2 years, Napier was rebuilt following the Art Deco style in vogue at the time, creating the urban center with the highest concentration of buildings in this style in the Southern Hemisphere. Colored facades with geometric motifs, zigzags, and representations of the rising sun tell the story of a community determined to start again after tragedy. The waterfront, meanwhile, features the characteristic sound shell, an open-air amphitheater in Art Deco style that overlooks the ocean and serves as the heart of the city's social life. The coast of Hawke's Bay, moreover, is traversed by a network of bicycle paths extending for over 124 miles, allowing exploration of the coastline and hinterland on 2 wheels, passing between beaches, cliffs, and urban parks. Napier represents a journey through time, an open-air museum where architecture tells a story of human resilience. Punakaiki. Water has sculpted the rock into superimposed layers, resembling stacks of pancakes, giving this place the nickname Pancake Rocks. Formed 30 million years ago from the remains of marine organisms and compacted under enormous pressures, These limestone layers emerge from the sea thanks to tectonic movements. During high tide, ocean waves crash against the coast and shoot jets of water through blowholes, which are natural ducts carved in the rock by erosion. Here, the roar of water resonates like a drum, while sprays rise toward the sky, also creating rainbows on sunny days. Additionally, a 20-minute trail winds through this geological formation, part of Paparoa National Park, while the coastal rainforest reaches the sea, creating a contrast between vegetation and bare rocks. Moeraki Boulders. Stone spheres emerge from the sand, like giant eggs laid by a mythological being. These perfectly round boulders, some with a circumference of over 6 feet, took 4 million years to form. The process began on the seabed when sediments gathered around organic nuclei, creating concretions that erosion then freed from the surrounding rock. Tides continue to uncover new boulders from the cliff, while those already exposed slowly crack, revealing crystallized interiors similar to dinosaur nests. Kaikoura Beach, therefore, where these boulders are found, becomes a theater for photographers at both dawn and sunset, when the raking light enhances the spherical shapes that seem to roll toward the sea. Lake Pukaki. Turquoise water fills a valley carved by glaciers, creating a mirror that reflects the profile of Mount Cook in the background. The lake's unique color also derives from the fine rock dust called glacial flour, and rivers born from melting glaciers transport this mineral dust into the lake, which then splits sunlight into hues that seem unreal. The road along the lake offers one of the most photographed road scenes in New Zealand, with views of the country's highest mountains, while the water feeds a system of hydroelectric power plants that provides 18% of national electricity. Finally, around the shores, the arid and rocky land contrasts with the intensity of the water, creating a unique landscape of its kind. Mount Taranaki. A volcano rises from the flat terrain like a perfect cone, isolated and dominating the surrounding landscape. Its symmetry made it the protagonist of the film The Last Samurai, where it played the role of Japan's Mount Fuji without the need for special effects. The mountain changes face with the seasons. In winter, snow covers its peak, while in summer it reveals the black volcanic rock. The Maori consider it an ancestor and tell that it once lived with the other volcanoes in the center of the North Island. But after a battle for the love of Pihanga, it retreated westward, digging the Wanganui riverbed in its escape. Egmont National Park, meanwhile, protects the rainforest surrounding the base, creating a perfect green circle around the volcano. Waiheke Island. Usually, ferries leave Auckland and in 40 minutes arrive in a totally different world, where vineyards alternate with secluded beaches. Waiheke, the largest inhabited island in the Hauraki Gulf, has transformed its identity from a hippie refuge of the 1960s to a world-class wine destination. The wineries mainly produce Syrah, Merlot, and Chardonnay, taking advantage of the island's microclimate, which is drier and warmer than nearby Auckland. Coastal paths, on the other hand, connect hidden bays where the water changes color with the tides, and the sand often remains deserted even in high season. Regarding the 9,000 permanent residents, meanwhile, they keep the original spirit of the island alive, resisting the growing real estate pressure generated by proximity to the metropolis. This island offers a perfect countryside and sea experience just minutes from the center of a large city. Wai-O-Tapu. The ground opens into steaming craters, while pools of colored water boil under a sky often veiled by steam. Wai-O-Tapu, which in Maori language means sacred water, represents one of New Zealand's most active geothermal fields. Here, the so-called artist's palette exhibits a lake of impossible colors, varying between orange, green, and blue, and mixing on the water's surface thanks to the minerals dissolved in the ground. Additionally, every morning at 10:15, the Lady Knox geyser is activated with the help of ecological soap, shooting water up to 65 feet high. Visitors follow wooden walkways that wind between collapsed craters and boiling mud pools, while the scent of sulfur permeates the air, a powerful reminder of the thin layer of Earth's crust present and the power of our planet pulsing just beneath visitors' feet. In concluding this visual journey through New Zealand, we have moved from the charm of its breathtaking fjords to its most incredible volcanic landscapes, exploring together not only places, but also curiosities that make every corner of this land unique. We hope that the images and stories told have enriched your knowledge and stimulated the desire to personally explore the extraordinary beauty of this fascinating country.